So hello everyone and welcome to Transatlantic Poetry on Air. My name is Robert Peake, the creator of the series, and tonight I'm delighted to have the Poetry Society hosting our evening's reading. Edward Doegar, the general manager of the Poetry Society, joins us now from London. Ed?
Hi, Robert. Thank you very much. We're thrilled to be taking on this edition of Transatlantic Poetry on Air, and we're really pleased to be able to present two wonderful poets. We're broadcasting from London here, from Edinburgh, and from Chicago tonight. We've got Hannah Gamble joining us from Chicago. And Alan Gillis joining us from Edinburgh. And just a couple of moments to sort of introduce hopefully new viewers to what we'll be doing tonight. You can ask us questions. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of the reading. And each of the poets will read for 15 to 20 minutes, first Hannah and then Alan. And I will be taking questions throughout, which hopefully Robert will feed to me seamlessly. So yeah, we're very excited to be trying it out. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Hannah Gamble. Her first collection, Your Invitation to a Modest Breakfast, was selected by Bernadette Mayer for the National Poetry Series and was published in 2012 by Fence Books. Hannah was awarded a Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation this year, and she's one of the poets who was selected by Poetry Magazine to appear in the spring edition of Poetry Review, some of the American poets that we featured in Poetry Review, so we're very excited to have her here. There was a wonderful poem, Growing the Bear, in that edition, which I rather hope she reads tonight. Hannah lives in Chicago. She's joining us along with her dog Lola, and she's going to read for 15 or 20 minutes, at which point she'll pass back to me and I'll introduce Alan. So Hannah, are you there to join us?
Hi, I'm here. Hello.
Is Lola there too?
She's not. I put her away. She was chewing on a bone and it was really loud on the floor. So I thought, if she starts barking, I'll bring her out. So I guess I'm going to read some poems now. I was not planning on reading the bear one. I'm sorry. If something overcomes me and I'm able to look through the manuscript very quickly to find it, maybe I will. Otherwise, I'm just sorry. But here's a poem I wrote. Hanging out with girls. Hanging out with girls makes me lonely. There's so much of no one is fat, and he was a dick for saying that, and she was a bitch for not listening to you better. Looking at pictures makes me lonely too. The time that we were G-chatting, but I was also crying, looking at pictures of Eric dancing with his friend's mom at a wedding. Someone asked me at a poetry reading how I got so comfortable talking in between poems. And I said that one went to see some musicians perform for a birthday. And even when they were playing beautiful Chopin, they offered a little something extra, like a physical comedy routine built around the playing of the piece. I said that since then I've wanted to give people who come to see poetry a little something extra, and that me blabbering is all I've ever had to give or to keep or to be with on my own. And there's really very little art in that. You'll never hear me say it's noble. Or if it is noble, it's only because it isn't fun to show everyone how little you have or how little you are. But no one has much, and no one is much, and everyone should know that we share that. A tiny spot. A tiny spot of blood on my shirt is not the subject of this poem. I felt sick, knowing I'd said what I didn't mean, and then I dreamt about having said exactly what I meant, and oh look, everything worked out fine. You are wrong if you think a girl making up her own language after something she never wants to talk about happens to her is the subject of this poem. I receive emails all the time, and physical mail too, so don't tell me that my life isn't full of feeling cared about and feeling safe, or alternatively, knowing that if at this moment a gray horse came tearing down Chicago's streets, I could stop that horse in her tracks and ask for a ride and be given it. And not even to have to wear a coat, because joy conducts heat like the perfect thing someone says when you're upset, though in other instances it may sound like an insult. But in that moment it's kind, because the truth is a service and a vote of confidence that you can take it. You don't even have to clean yourself up very much for someone who knows you. Horse, when I saw you charging past the ice cream vendor, streaming sweat, eyes mostly white with panic and strength, anger and exhaustion, my mind recognized you and called out to you with my name. A woman is on the phone. A woman is on the phone with her boyfriend who lives in another state. She sees that a mouse is swimming in a large blue pot wherein she had cooked ropa vieja. The mouse is droopily spotted with orange grease. The man asks the woman what she will do about it. The woman says, "I'm going to put the lid back on the pot." The next morning, the woman finds that the mouse is still swimming. The woman is so proud of the mouse. "You are amazing," she says. She fishes it out of the water with a slotted spoon. She crosses the street and puts the mouse down on the grass at the edge of the park. The woman's boyfriend arrives on the megabus. His penis is too big, but somehow they're blessed and they make it work. They take a walk to the Mexican grocery store to buy plantain chips. The woman takes them through the park and tells the man that she let the mouse go. They find the mouse in the spot that she left it, dead and frozen. She hadn't thought about the wet fur, of course. It was just because she was afraid of the mouse and grossed out by the grease. The woman feels the way she felt when she flattened a salamander in a door frame by opening the door to her friend's apartment. It feels like being sick, but then it stops. It feels like tears, but before you get there. The woman is generally kind, but due to fear and selfishness, often fails her better self. When I am a featured player in a comedy troupe, all of my characters will be based on her. Her and the woman I rented a room from in Houston, who wouldn't let me pitch a tent in the backyard because she was worried that a homeless person would stay there while I was gone during the day. I will explain infidelity. When you are living in a different part of the country than is your lover, the one who is right there and wants you is the right one. When you are in the same state as your lover, sometimes that ends up illustrating how you cannot want the one who is right there and wants you. Whenever people are surprised that so-and-so has cheated on a very good-looking person with a much less good-looking person, I think, you don't know how cheating works. It's just like when people say, no one would rape a fatty like her. They don't know. When I wanted a vacation, the whole point was to go somewhere different, not better. And when I wanted to hurt one of the small animals on my father's property, I didn't look for the cutest animal. In fact, when I found an animal that no one else was paying much attention to, I found my prospective actions less heinous. I was only broadening a crack in an already cracked thing, like choosing the flattened candy bar to steal. Edifying just to see. When his dick finally felt right again, and he could pee without it burning, he went right back out into the special places where the women lived and were waiting. Some pulled their dresses down like they were ready to have his dick go between their tits like right now, and some of them seemed to want a beer first. The magic of women just trying to get something right. They've usually been taught that getting a man to come is the easiest thing, working a crude tool. A good thing to do, therefore, when everything else that day has proved to be too challenging. The man takes one woman to a hotel bathroom. The hotel is the nicest hotel in all of Houston. To get to the private bathroom, they must walk through what was once a ballroom, all its gold and domes retained. The woman thinks it's edifying just to see this kind of place. The music playing in the private bathroom when the man hands her a stack of paper towels to wipe off her chest is more electronic and sexual than she might have expected based on the traditional feel of the ballroom. The man feels it's best not to hold the woman's hand as they leave the hotel because that could indicate a tenderness that he thinks it's best not to offer. At a bakery nearby, they stop so she can eat a macaroon, and they get into a friendly argument about art that leaves them both feeling happy. So, with a normal poetry reading, I would be watching the faces of everybody, and whenever I said something that made someone make a face, like they didn't like it or they were uncomfortable, or alternatively something that they really liked and they kind of perked up, I don't know, that's the only thing that ever leads to me saying anything in between poems. I never have stories to tell about the poems. I just look at the faces of the people who are watching me read, and then I talk about them to them. But I can't do that now. But I do like to sort of imagine all of you guys just sitting out there watching me talk to you, but also no one really. I don't know. I'm glad you're here. I can't see you. I don't know who you are. Some of you are probably great. Some of you are probably awful. But I'm glad you are here. Here's another poem. A mind that climbs the air. And finally, I ask that my bitterness be unparalleled by any alive on this earth, because I would like to have none of it. And as far as I understand, most people alive on Earth have some. Isn't a bitter person just like one of those talking trees who hurls apples at nature guides who overlook them, but never say thank you when a squealing toddler points at its leaves? The Chinese regularly prepare dishes from the flesh of the bitter melon, and those who work in dim sum ballrooms try to steer Westerners away from this particular kind of adventure. But once I was the Westerner who wouldn't take heed. I said, thanks, but I'll take 4. Moments later, I was the Westerner sending the cakes back to the kitchen. Some people can't resolve a cat's cool demeanor with its supple, spreadable body. They can't see that a relaxed body makes for a mind that is thoroughly its own dandelion. a mind that climbs the air towards the sky, pausing maybe to look at you, but not to make unproductive conversation, will soon be mine, once this vertically small but horizontally medium-sized Asian woman has cracked every inch of my spine with her toes. So I'm a little torn here because I had one poem left that I was planning to read, but I think that I've only been reading for like 10 minutes. So I might actually try and find that bear poem that Ed was talking about. And I think that I can do it fairly. Oh my God, I just flipped right to it actually. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read this bear poem for Ed, and then I'll have one more poem to share with you guys. This is a poem that I wrote because in college, I think all the first poems I loved were written by regretful old white men in the upper middle class. So this is that poem for me. Growing a bear. Growing a bear, a midnight occupation. The need for which you perhaps first realized when you saw the wrong kind of shadow under your chin. A convex when you expected a concave, so now it's clear you're getting older. Your wife was in the shower and you wanted to step inside and soap her up like you did in college when she said, "I will shower with you, but I'm leaving my underwear on." And you enjoyed her in every way you could enjoy a person with soap. You didn't join your wife in the shower. She didn't about letting you see her shave her legs or wash herself anywhere. You think she read it somewhere, that letting your husband see you pluck anything, trim anything, apply medicine to anything, will make him feel like he's furniture. It's exactly on cold nights like these that the basement is not as forbidding as it should be, despite the fact that you have to put gloves on in what is part of your own home. Downstairs, a large bathtub, kept, for some reason, after remodeling. It is there that your bear will be grown, by you, but you have no idea how. Probably wishing is most of it. Fertilizer, chunks of raw stew meat, handfuls of blackberries, 2 metal rakes, and a thick rug make up the rest, then water. You get an email from a friend late at night saying he can't sleep. You write back, "I hope you feel sleepy soon," and think how childish the word sleepy is. And you're a man, older than most of the people you see on television. You haven't even considered how your wife will feel when you've finished growing your bear. You could write a letter to her tonight explaining how your life was just so lacking in bear. "Janet, it's nothing you've done. Clearly, you have no possible way of supplying me with a bear or any of the activities I might be able to enjoy after acquiring the bear. It might just be best to keep the two worlds separate. Janet clearly prefers things to be comfortable and unchallenging. Janet soaks herself up. Janet puts herself to bed. You just happen to be there. You go on your weekly bike ride with Mark and tell him that you've been growing a bear. An 18-wheeler flies by and he doesn't seem to hear you, plus he's focused on the hill. You think about how not all friends know what each other sound like when struggling and breathing heavy. Past the age of college athletics, most friends don't even know what each other's bodies look like. Flushed, tired, showering, cold. All right, so I have one more poem. Thanks again, everybody. I wanted to make myself like the ravine so that all good things would flow into me. Because the ravine is lowly, it receives an abundance. This sounds wonderful to everyone who suffers from lacking, but consider too that a ravine keeps nothing out. In flows a peach with only one bite taken out of it, but in flows too the body of a stiff mouse, half cooked by the heat of the stove it was toughening under. I have an easygoing way about me. I've been an inviting host, meaning to and not meaning to. Oops, he's approaching with his tongue already out and moving. Analyze the risks of becoming a ravine. Compare those with the risks of becoming a well with a well-bolted lid. Which I'd prefer depends largely on which kind of animals were inside me when the lid went on and how likely they'd be to enjoy the water versus drown, freeze, or starve. The lesson: close yourself off at exactly the right time. On the day you wake up under some yellow curtains with a smile on your face, lock the door. Live out your day like that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, Hannah. That was really wonderful. It is quite strange because there should be applause going on now. There you go. There's some applause in the office in the back there. And that was a lovely reading, and I'm very, very pleased that you read Growing the Bear. Next, we're going to hear from Alan Gillis, who has in fact recently just been picked as one of the next generation poets by Poetry Book Society, and has published 4 books with Gallery Press. His latest book, Scapegoat, is just out, and a wonderful book. I hope you can see that. As is Hannah's. There you go. And hopefully the reading will inspire anyone watching to go and buy the books, because they are great. Alan is the editor of Edinburgh Review. He works at Edinburgh University, and we're absolutely delighted that he's going to read for us now. Over to you, Alan.
Hello, hope that's okay. Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you very much, Hannah. Really enjoyed that and very pleased to be reading with you, if not with you, but kind of with you. As Ed said, a new book has just come out. I'm very pleased about that. I've been doing readings recently, exclusively reading from that, and actually just sitting here, I've decided to read some older stuff. I hope that's okay. I've just grabbed my first book from 10 years ago this month, off the shelf. I'm going to read a poem, the first poem in it, which is called The Ulster Way. I'm here in Edinburgh. I'm from the north of Ireland. The Ulster Way is very much a Northern Irish poem. It means the Ulster Way. The way in Ulster is sort of very bossy. You're told what to do a lot. It's a wonderful place, but it can be quite bossy, being brought up. This is right, this is wrong, sort of thing. But also the Ulster Way is the name of a series of interlinking pathways or walkways which go around mostly the east coast, designed to get people out in the great open and go walking. Often you'd be driving a car down the road and there'd be a sign for the Ulster Way, and it'd be sort of pointing into a field, sort of through a ditch and through a hedge. So this is also a poem about the Ulster Way in that sense. And finally, it's a poem about being scared of cows. The Ulster Way. This is not about burns or hedges. There will be no gorse. You will not notice the ceaseless photosynthesis or the dead trees' thousand fingers, the trunk's inhumanity writhing with texture, as you will not be passing into farmland. nor will you be set upon by cattle, ingleburied, haunching and haunting with their eyes, their shocking opals, graving you, hoovering and scooping you, full of a whatness that sees you through the abattoir hillscape, the runnels slabber through dark grass, sweating for the night that will purple to a love-bitten bruise. All this is in your head. If you walk, don't walk away in silence, under the stars, ice fires of violence, to the water's darkened strand. For this is not about horizons or their curving limitations. This is not about the rhythm of a songline. There are other paths to follow. Everything is about you. Now, listen. And whilst it's in my hand, I think I'm going to read the second poem of my first book, if you can forgive me. This is called 12th of October 1994. It's set in what's called the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zones are a chain of snooker centres, sort of dark buildings with pool tables, arcade games, poker machines, what I would call nudgers, and in the back sort of snooker halls. And there's sort of places in the edge of town where the hard men of town would congregate. And this is a poem about a character in playing a sort of a violent arcade game in the Twilight Zone as hard men congregate. But there is another element behind the poem. This month, 20 years ago, actually, there's a loyalist paramilitary ceasefire that set in motion what became the peace process in Northern Ireland. And this is just sort of imagining the night before that ceasefire, all the hard men being brought together and being told what was about to happen, basically being told that they're about to lay down their arms and say sorry for their violence. So that ceasefire was announced on the 13th of October 1994, and this is 12th of October 1994. I enter the Twilight Zone, the one run by Frankie 10 Pints Fraser, and slide the heptagon of my 20p piece into its slot. The lights come on. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs are playing Wooly Bully. A virtual combat zone lights up the green of my eyes. My hand clammy on the joystick as Johnny Bookkeeper McFeeder saunters in and Smokey sings the tracks of my tears. He gives the nod to Betty behind the bulletproof screen. Love of my life, he says, and she says, ach, Johnny, when who do you know but Terry the Blaster McMaster levels in, and B Bumble and the Stinger start playing Nut Rocker. I shoot down a sniper and enter a higher level. Betty buzzes Frankie, who has a shifty look around, poking his nut around a big blue door, through which I spy Billy Warts McBreeze drinking tea and tapping his toes to Randy and the Rainbow's version of Denise. On the screen I mutilate a double agent ninja and collect a bonus drum of kerosene. Game of Love by Wayne Fontana pumps out of the machine when I have to catch my breath, realizing Ricky Rottweiler Rice is on my left, saying watch for the nifty fucker with a crossbow on the right. Sweat pearls tease my spine, tensed ever more rigidly, when Ricky's joined by Andy No-Knees Tweed, both of them whistling merrily to the crystals, then he kissed me. What the fuck is going on here? Asked Victor Steel Plate Hog as he slides through the fired door. The kid's on level 3, says Andy, at which point Frankie does his nut, especially since the Cramps are playing Can Your Pussy Do the Dog. Betty puts on Curtis and the Clichés, Brush Against Me Barbarella instead, when the first helicopter shreds the air to the left of the screen. Gathering my wits and artillery, I might eclipse the high score of Marky Life Sentence Prentice set on October 6th. I hear Benny Vindaloo McVeigh say, right, we're going to do this fucking thing. By now the smoke is so thick the screen is almost grey. The Shangri-Las are playing Remember Walking in the Sand. Frankie says, no, Victor, nobody's going to fucking disband. Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans are playing Zippity Doodah. Through a napalm blur I set the interns free. They wear US Marine khaki. Jimmy 12-inch Lynch says, son, not bad for 20p. I leave the zone and go back to the fierce grey day. It looks like snow. So that's from my first book. This is my second book. We're going to troll through it. Around this time of the year, October, certainly autumn anyway, in Belfast, where the River Lagan meets the mouth of the River Lagan feeds into Belfast Lough. There is a couple of bridges, and on one of those bridges there's perennially a flock of starlings that roost. And often on autumn nights there's very beautiful skylines, sort of red and pink and whatnot, and the starlings do their thing, going this way and that way and swirling in sort of patterns and chaos against that sky, and it's one of the most beautiful things I know. I always wanted to write a poem about it. This is a poem about being really miserable whilst looking at it. It's called Lagan Weir. The way things are going, there'll be no quick fix, no turning back. The way that flock of starlings skirls back in itself, then swerves forward, swabbing and scrolling the shell-pink buff sky, while I stand in two minds on this scuff bridge leaning over the fudged river that slushes its dark way to open harbours and the glistering sea. Like flak from fire, a blizzard of evacuees, that hula-hooping sky swarm of starlings swoops and loops the dog-rose sky, while anyway I look, the writings on the wall. I watch the hurly-burlied, humdrum traffic belch to a stop, fugging, clacking, charring the clotted air, making it clear things are going to get a whole lot worse before they get better. That flickered, fluttered, hurry-scurry of stars left, then swish is right, through the violet sky, while I huddle and huff, with a dove in one ear saying, look the other way, a hawk in the other, braying self-righteous fury. It's hard not to turn back to a time when one look at you and I knew things were going to get a whole lot better before they'd get worse. That hue and cry, those hurricanes of starlings swoosh and swirl their fractals over towers, hotels, hospitals, flyovers, catamarans, city dwellers, passers through, who might as well take a leap and try following after that scatter-wheeling circus of shadows, as slowly turn and make their dark way homeward, never slowing, not knowing the way things are going. Is everything okay there? It looks like my image is sort of stuck in an awful mid-poem pose. Can you hear me okay?
We can still hear you fine.
Yeah.
Yeah? The video gone up the left, yeah?
Unfortunately, yeah, the video's gone a bit, but you're still coming through loud and clear.
Oh,
So.
Jesus, look at me. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry about the video. I don't know. I haven't pressed anything. I'll keep going.
Please do.
Okay. This is from third book, Here Comes the Night. This is a love sonnet, a heartbreaker for you. The idea behind this is the idea of a breaking up of a relationship being similar to, the breaking up of a band. It's called With or Without You. Oh no, she's listening to Yoko Ono. We were as well matched as bread and milk, as Brian Eno and Bono. But now I'm hanging to her by a thread, a terminal patient hooked to a drip. Now my pet names for her are shit and smack, and I live for a hit. To lick those lip gloss lips, be a moog she might play. Imagine a millipede on its back, its 1,000 legs twitching every which way. That was my mind when she said her muse was sick and she was off to discover new music. Now our love is a derelict studio where I sit solo, counting in, uno, duo. Okay, sorry about the video feed, it's just got even more weird. I am now moving to Scapegoat, my new book. Since we're having a computery evening, I'm going to read a computery poem. All the more fitting that everything's screwing up on me. The poem's called Zeitgeist. When I was younger, I was one of those guys who felt that, tried hard to have his finger on the pulse, know what was going on, and be a culture vulture as much as, an arsehole from the north of Ireland can do so. As you get older, you realise that's impossible, or it's impossible to keep up, but more to the point, you completely stop caring, which is an interesting that sort of thing. Then I thought, not knowing what's going on, not knowing where anything's at, that really was actually the true way of having one's finger on the pulse. There's nothing out there, and that's where it's at. This is a poem called Zeitgeist. I look for you behind retail parks, ghostlit showrooms, in dark scrubland where plastics flutter on coils of barbed wire, where, through mean soil strewn with pipes, cartons, slugged condoms, streams a steep-edged brook. Drawn to its burble and splurge, I slip in the verge, fall and splunge, stretching for the banks, reeds, not catching hold of anything sound, my hands ice-cube cold. And past megastores, waste yards, the suburbs' borders, carried along on colourless waters, ever gushing on, with no smile, no frown. I call you down. I call you down. City limits are fine, but I spend most days hemmed in, meshed and lost up a tower, in front of a screen, black plastic keyboard, black plastic machine on a laminate desk, where the windows don't open much in case I throw myself out. Dust gathers in the phone, empty plant pots. I am alone much of the time, to the extent that a vague itch of harassment prickles my contact with people. And vacuumed through the non-soul of blank matter, with no smile, no frown, I call you down, I call you down. Outside on shopped streets swarm mothers, alpha males, screenagers, old, young, lovers, the homeless, the bewildered, ill, unique, the beautiful with their self as boutique. So many thronged into one body, surrounding me, squishing, cumbering me with sucking hair and grey breath, a cracked open swallowing mouth. And looking through a million eyes, slouching upon a million thighs, compelled by the shackles of meat-headed instinct to slowly circle around and around, with no smile, no frown, I call you down, I call you down. Inside the machine, or at least on the screen, I discover everything that has been, will be, or might never be, has a place. You can search for God, your name, any face, and reconfigure. You can hurt someone and they won't know it was you. There's a room for all things, the wall of each room an exit to all that's possible, all interconnected with, as they say, no edge and no center. I press enter and enter and enter, not knowing where to go, what I might find in this flat, expanding, surveillant mind, weightless, free floating, with no smile, no frown. I commune. Then the machine powers down. Okay, I was going to read one more. Could you just let me know, is that okay time-wise, or would you rather?
Please do, yes.
Yeah?
That'd be lovely.
One more. Okay, well, I was going to do another computery one, but maybe I've done enough of those. I'll do a computery one. It's not often you're talking to yourself in a machine like this. This is a sort of Facebooker one. I don't like Facebook. I joined it out of nosiness for people from the past, exes and whatnot. And what became very clear is that you're not meant to know what people from your past are doing these days, because you're meant to imagine it. You can imagine that they're all pining for you, and it turns out the buggers have lives and are dentists or solicitors or something. And it spoils it. There's one more way of, technology bypassing the role that used to be for reverie and imagination. Another thing about the poem is it's about nostalgia, about hearing somebody's name and being thrown back and wondering, is it good to be looking back? Is nostalgia a good thing or a bad thing? So this plays on that idea on Facebook. If somebody approaches you to be a friend, you can ignore it or confirm it. Thank you very much for listening. This is called Down Through Dark and Emptying Streets. Open a new window. Go on and Google yourself. Open Facebook and update all trace of yourself. While you search MySpace, sync your apps, correct a wiki, blah blah on your blog, tweet and stream, you see such and such has got in touch, requesting you as a Facebook friend. And the name's slow dawn gravity widens the window, weirds and sends you plunging into the deja vu of a flame-skied twilight, with unreal soldiers in the walls, lit by fire-red and air-blue streetlights. Sends you trampling through the fank and crumble and regal packets of your hedgeless estate in a tarnished and tufty leather jacket, flappered and frazzled paisley shirt, scuffed and shagged out oxblood boots, walking away from your mother, the screech of your sister's wee black flute, past the clanking monkey bars, swings and roundabout of a dog-dark dungeon of a playground, through a sinister elm-guarded car park, cutting to the main street through the grounds of a windowless factory, past the pockmarked and Jesus Lives walls of the public library, while the sky turns to licorice, dull cardigan and tobacco fumes, embered with persimmon blushes, melon flowers, mango blooms. Walking until you catch a hint of her toe-to-heel click-clack and follow her past scuppled shops, dead-end alleys, hokey flats, past head-the-ball hard-nuts driving by in souped-up cortinas and capris, hunting their prey, And she's driving you, doolally, knocked at the knees, as you follow her past the bookies, arcade machines and nudgers, Fisher-Price lights and beat-bop bings, past the queue of scratching pudgers in the chip shop, where a pouty girl shovels cod with a lizard-eye love bite, Princess Diana pendant and powdered over black eye, past chain-smoking bars with duct tape in the cracks of their panes, silhouetted by the awful size and dormant metal of dockyard cranes. And you're all hearts and flowers with each step into the square, where she turns so you can finger her pompous bleached and hairsprayed hair, and she says, "Hey there," in her clown voice, "is that a spanner in your works?" Under the 20-foot high frown of an Ulster says no banner, and her rib cage is delicate white as flour on a fillet of fish, while her lips, still hot with sausage, salt and malt vinegar, mouth a wish, and clarty newspapers carry news of the weekend's nil-nils, wind-blown with special brew cans and styrofoam cups as you thrill to her octopus fingers, the probe and prod of her plum of a tongue, your teeth and her teeth tapping together, holding breath until kingdom come. She asks, will all this last forever? Against the dun Woolworth's door. Now your hard drive hums and haws. You waver between confirm and ignore. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry about the visuals.
That was marvelous. Thank you very much, Alan. That was great. It's I think it's sort of strange as well that I'm so pleased about the technological capacity that this has let us do. You know, I think that's something that what Robert's enabled here is wonderful. But I'm also so taken with these poems, which have a rather darker view of quite a lot of that capacity. I thought perhaps because it is such a wonderful opportunity, having a poet from the US and a poet from the UK being able to share a reading in this way, that we might start by just discussing poetry communities and whether you both felt that you came from a very distinct poetic community and tradition, and how that's impacted your own work. Perhaps if we started with you, Alan?
Okay, well, I think certainly Northern Ireland, there were lots of very good poets, to the extent that the first thing you knew was the world didn't need another Northern Irish poet, so you were sort of screwed before you began. I think also as a young man, I was aware that a lot of those poets had worked as kind of like groups. Seamus Heaney, Derek Mann, Michael Longley were very close friends. Kieran Carson, Paul Muldoon were very good friends. But more than that, they were also very self-aware. I think a model is American. The strength of that sense of San Francisco poets or New York poets, and the idea of a coterie, which is, again, you know, that stretches back to France and European movements in modernism, that there is actually strength to be taken, and lots of fertility can arise from the congregation of poets. At the same time, you're very aware that Northern Ireland is a very small place compared to America, that you know, you don't become a poet to join a club, really. I mean, it is a loner's game too, so it's a balance. I found I was pretty much a loner with it. I worked with poetry. I worked in the Seamus Heaney Centre, but I didn't show people my own poems. And I worked, hopefully facilitating, you know, other poets came to Belfast, and I was part of parts. But meanwhile, I wrote my poems very much on my own. But once I published, then I found, you know, fellowship of others that I'd really been missing out, and I sort of cursed myself that I had kept it to myself so much. And I think, you know, other poets from the same place as me, such as Leontia Flynn, Nick Laird, Sinead Morrissey. Just knowing them was just a great boost, and so there's a sense of, the elders and betters being from the community was very important, and then the fact that there's other people doing the same madness that you're doing also helps. But a lot of the time, let's face it, is spent on your own, and that's the way it should be. I don't know what Hannah's experience is.
Hannah, did you feel that you came from a very tight-knit poetry community, or do you feel you have one that's very tight-knit now in Chicago? I know that you're involved with Poetry Foundation.
Well, I think I first became a poet in a very tight-knit community, and that was, my MFA program at the University of Houston. And when I entered that program, I was just, hoping that I could be a poet, but I didn't really know because I hadn't done much of it. But then I had wonderful classmates and wonderful teachers, and within that first year, maybe even the first semester of grad school, I realized, okay, I can be a poet. I'm going to keep doing this, and I even somewhere along the way, I think I just thought, like, well, yeah, I will have a book, though I didn't know when, but anyway, that was a very tight-knit community, and when I was in grad school, I don't even think I had any friends who were not poets. And there was a time where I, sort of idiotically, but maybe you can understand, I don't know, I thought, man, how could I ever be close with anyone who wasn't a writer? Because at that time, it was all that I thought about and all that I did, and the only people I was around were other writers. So I thought, man, what am I going to do when I get out of grad school and I don't just get to hang out exclusively with writers anymore? And then that was basically what happened when I came to Chicago, was that I was making all new friends, and some of them were poets, but I made actually very good friends with musicians and visual artists, and I'm not actually super involved with the poetry community on a regular basis here in Chicago, in that I don't go to readings, every week like I used to in Houston, but I do feel, number one, that it's great to know people who aren't poets, in addition to knowing poets, and it's just great to have community of any kind, wonderful, kind, creative, feisty people. Everything I wrote in my second book, I wrote being here in Chicago, never having a workshop, never really showing anyone the poems, except maybe once or twice a friend. So I think it's a different kind of book, and those were the poems I read today. So I think it has a different feel than the book that I made when I was in grad school. But I guess my final word will just be, while I don't go to poetry readings every week or whatever, I do feel immense support from the Poetry Foundation. They've given me a lot of good opportunities, including this. And I think, being able to be in touch with writers on Twitter and Facebook is actually really helpful when you just need some advice, like, hey, do I actually need an agent if I want FSG to look at my book or whatever? Strangers. But people who also write can give you that advice, so that's nice too.
Okay, great. And in terms of, because obviously, Alan, you talked about the Northern Irish poets that you were around and very aware of, and how much do you look to the US, and Hannah, how much are you looking to us over here, or to Europe, or how much are you taking influence from outside as well? How has that worked for both of you?
Will I go first? You follow your nose. I think very importantly, Northern Ireland's quite a small place, and grew up in the Troubles, so you end up, you grew up resentful of the place. So the first thing you did was read outside work. So as a teenager, you're reading as much American poetry as you can. You start with beat. I remember I was about 22 or so the first day I read John Ashbery. It was a big day in my life in some ways. It sort of, confused me, blew me away, all that sort of stuff. I'm a disciple of Wallace Stevens, for better or for worse. I teach a course now on Marianne Moore, Williams Pound. So I try, the one problem coming from Ireland, UK is just so much off America and so many very, very fine poets. It's you have to go by word of mouth sometimes and just trust to anthologies and keep fishing till you find the good things. This is great because now I've discovered Hannah and I'm delighted to have done that. But it might have taken some time for me to discover her work without this sort of thing. And you don't just I think. I liked Yeats. I heard he was influenced by French poets, so I bought an anthology of Baudelaire and, the Absinthe, Parisian dope smokers. And so you learn about French symbolism. That quickly puts you forward to, you read Rimbaud, and then that puts you forward into the more modernist types. And you just keep going. I think too much of one thing, too much poetry in one style from one place was anathema. Um, and the interesting thing, what I learned was all of those Northern Irish poets that I ended up revering, Fahini and so on. Clearly, they'd done the same thing. America had really opened their eyes, but they were very, very deeply involved with an Irish tradition and a British tradition and an Eastern European tradition. They were deeply aesthetic, yet they clearly had close relations with plumbers and diggers. And poetry has to be a kind of melting pot, I guess. It sounds crass, but I think it's true. Over to Hannah, please.
Well, this will be brief because I don't know many poets from the UK. I'm very happy to have had this opportunity to get to know Alan's work. And I just wanted to say there was some line, I think it was the poem Zeitgeist that you read, Alan, where there was this line that I think was a vague interest prickles my contact with people, but I'm not sure if I'm like misremembering it. The minute I what is it?
That's right. Yeah, you remembered it right.
Awesome. Yeah, I just love that line, and I also loved the simplicity and yet kind of I think the I don't know, the meaning of the lines, you can hurt someone and they won't know it was you. That was just great. Anyway, so I was writing little things down when you were reading, just that I liked very much, but I really haven't been given the opportunity to get to know many authors from the UK, so this is wonderful.
Great. I think you can hurt someone and they won't know it was you really struck me as well, and I sort of worried that there's an audience out there. Don't get any ideas. But yeah, I also like the idea of growing up in Northern Ireland teaches you to be resentful. There's a wonderful question coming from Eleanor in Northern Tipperary, who said if Hannah tempers her readings according to what she reads on the faces of her audience, is that because she's noted a lack of response or perceived response, and does that do you do that? Do you change your reading because of that? You sort of mentioned that it was often what you talked about in between the poems, but does it actually transform what you're reading, who you're reading it to, and how?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think I pick the poems based on what I'm in the mood to read that day, and I just figure that whatever I'm most excited to say and to share, I'll be able to sell it the best. I just take it for granted that there will be some poems that, where I say something that someone doesn't like, and of course the opposite too. So I don't ever really like shuffle the poems around and change my plan because I see someone making a face, but I do just like, if I see that, and this actually happened one time where I was giving a reading in Nashville, which is where my family lives, and my stepmom had brought along one of her neighbors, Cheryl, who I like, and I knew from before I like her. But I read a poem that was about a woman consulting with a queen, trying to decide if, like, she's going to lose her virginity, but she's asking the queen if she should practice with animals first, before humans. And I looked in the front row, and Cheryl was just making this face like, and she caught me looking at her, and so she kind of tried to tone her face down, but it went from just like, oh, to like, But I mean, what happened, I didn't, make any changes to the poems I read thereafter or whatever, but I did say, Cheryl, you hated that poem. Sorry. Or, I don't know if I really said sorry, but I definitely said, like, wow, you did not like that at all. And then everybody just kind of laughed. It's all really okay, I think, as long as you can just address potential discomfort in sort of hopefully a welcoming, friendly way.
That's great. How about you, Alan? Do you find yourself provoked into a different performance because of the audiences and having the audience taken away from you in this way? Does it change? Has it felt particularly freeing or more demanding?
I mean, all the spontaneous jokes are written out, days before, and not one thing is allowed to change. On the one hand, but I think you do rely on seeing the odd smile, or even in a bit, it's just 1% funny, somebody somewhere giggling, and there is that. Where you expect perhaps a bit of laughter and it doesn't come, it can be very tough indeed. So that puts you on your guard. I don't know if it changes what you read. I think what you respond to is, there's a quality to silence. You can feel a tension in the air and an atmosphere in a room, and I think that's what you strive for. A lot of my poems are long-ish. I don't have lots of sort of 12 to 20 liners. I have lots of sort of 40 to 70 liners. So they take me 4 or 5 minutes, and that's quite taxing for an audience. So, but you can feel whenever it's not going well, and it's a heartbreaker. There's not much you can do about it apart from maybe get an emergency funny one out, a slightly shorter one, and lay off the long ones. It's and things happen, lecterns fall over, PAs blow up, you fall on your backside. It does happen. So you got to be as relaxed as possible, but at the same time, your butterflies there. So it's an odd thing, right? And they're unaccountable things, really. And this has been the weirdest I've ever done, I have to say, in a good way. In a good way, it's a very good experience. But I hope there's an audience out there.
No, there certainly is, and I think we've probably got time for just one more question from the audience that is out there, just a quick question. We're going to end after this with a reading from Alan and Hannah. They're each going to just read one poem that they've been particularly influenced by, or that they feel is a bit of a touchstone poet for them. I'd just like to say that I've been thrilled to be part of this, and the Poetry Society are really happy to be supporting and hosting this series, this edition of the series. If we just go to Valerie's question, which was, what helps you, Valerie in London said, what helps you let your imagination run wild and free? Quite a large question, but hopefully one that might lead you into why you chose your touchstone poems. Hannah, if we start with you.
Sure. Actually, I think the poem that I'm going to read, the touchstone poem, it's going to be a good example of, it's a poem by Marie Howe, and I chose it because Marie Howe was actually a really useful author to me in terms of teaching me to tone down the level of imagination that I just like had flailing about wildly in every poem that I produced. I used to have a lot of anxiety, well, just about, maybe not offering the reader enough in a poem, and so I would just do everything, hoping that something would stick and that whoever was going to be reading it eventually would like one thing, and I would just throw it all in there. So I guess first to answer Valerie's question, I think letting the imagination run wild is not really a problem for me. I was sort of a solitary child, and I mean, I'm still very much an introvert, so just spend so much time wandering off, in my mind. So I guess the imaginary world, I actually had to figure out how to be more selective with it, or my portrayal of it, just so what resulted would actually be a decent, a decent poem that would be like accessible to someone who didn't share my brain. So when I read this Marie Howe poem in a minute, you'll see how she taught me maybe to edit a little bit, and maybe be a little more plain spoken and actually trust that real life is really interesting too, in addition to whatever wild and wacky thing I might think up, which I do also enjoy very much.
Why don't you read it now? Why don't you can follow on and read that, and then Alan can read his.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. It's pretty short. It's from Marie Howe's book, What the Living Do, and it was the first book of hers that I ever read. And this poem is about a brother and sister talking. The brother is very sick. It's called The Last Time. The last time we had dinner together in a restaurant with white tablecloths, he leaned forward and took my 2 hands in his hands and said, "I'm going to die soon. I want you to know that." And I said, "I think I do know." And he said, "What surprises me is that you don't." And I said, "I do." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Know that you're going to die." And he said, "No, I mean, know that you are."
Well, I think if we were at a reading, there'd be some oohs and ahs and stuff as well. But we are, the audience isn't here. Alan, how about you? Are you needing to contain your imagination, or is it something that you have to find ways to?
I'm not entirely sure I have one. The superficial answer to Valerie's question is probably whiskey. I think the serious answer is boredom, banality is what you need to have to do imaginative work, whatever that is. The life is busy. One's busy at work. One's busy at home. The head gets filled, and I think poetry is. You need to carry some of that into with you, but what you need is silence and emptiness in a strange way, and let things emerge. Lying down on a sofa, zoning out, trying not to think of anything is probably very important to whatever the imagination is. I've picked as my poem. I was going to try and be novel and pick somebody super cool and whatnot, but I've picked. I think Hannah referred to him as a disappointed old white poet or something. Pick Robert Frost. After Apple Picking is one of my favourite partially just because I'm enjoying autumn at the minute, and it's one of the great autumn poems. But more importantly, I mean, if something is imaginative to me, this poem sums it up. One follows one's imagination through sound. Well, it's a sort of an odd thing, but the when you write something down and start following the rhythm and the sound, whatever is meant by reality, the world you live in, it melts a little bit, becomes a little bit, uh, not hallucinogenic, but it becomes not quite solid, and yet it's still there. In this poem, it's in a sort of dream. It's a dream time, a soundscape in which a guy has been picking apples in a way that's very, very real, but he's then recounting that as he drifts off to sleep, and it becomes something deeper than surface reality, and that's the soundscape of the poem. It's a sensual thing. It's not about vision. It's not entirely about touch. It's not about memory, but it's all of these things become real, a sensual sort of present moment, and whatever the imagination is bound up in that, and in the hands of somebody like Robert Frost at his best, it's truly alchemical, and that I think is what you aspire towards. So everybody knows this one, but I'm going to read it anyway. This is called After Apple Picking, and again, thanks for listening. My long, two-pointed ladder sticking through a tree toward heaven still. And there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it. And there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I am done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night, the scent of apples. I am drowsing off. I cannot rub the strangeness from my sight. I got through from looking through a pane of glass. I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted and I let it fall and break. But I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and disappear, stem end and blossom end, and every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend, and I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down and not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap, as if no worth. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep.
Thank you, Alan. What a wonderful way to end a wonderful evening. Just a reminder that if you liked what you heard, please do seek out these poets' books at your favorite independent bookstore. And I know a lot of you really did like what you've heard tonight, because Twitter has been abuzz with people responding both to the poems and to the commentary and the discussion. And we've had a first in the Transatlantic series, which is an illustrated response to tonight's reading series. So I wanted to to put that up. I'm not sure if you can see it all, but this is meant to be the virtual audience. People clapping in their rooms at their computer screens, but they're all riding on top of giant snarling dogs, apparently. So a little bit of a surreal twist for your evening there. I wanted to mention our next reading coming up in November. We will be hosting Steve Komarnitsky and Rob Taylor. Steve, the British-Ukrainian poet, and Rob, coming at us from Canada. Will be over daylight savings time, so that'll be 8 p.m. GMT in November, 3 p.m. on the East Coast, noon on the West Coast. Again, thanks so much to both of our poets and to the Poetry Society for a really, really special evening. We'll see you back here again in November. Bye for now.